Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Organize, a webinar series on organizational capacity building. I am your host, Leisha McKinley Beach. The Emory University Campus Coordinating Center created this monthly webinar series to share with a broader audience of Southern nonprofit professionals some key information that may be missing as you prepare to scale up your organization's work. These webinars were designed for the busy nonprofit professional on the go to get a quick training and resources to help their organization function at the highest levels. These webinars will give people a look at what other trainings we have available here at Compass. Finally, each webinar will highlight one or more of the 8 core areas of our capacity building training. And for information on what trainings are available, we invite you to request a training at our website. So today we are super excited to introduce the webinar topic, Human Resources, Recruitment Policies, and Equity. During this webinar, we'll highlight a few strategies that CBOs, medical facilities, and other organizations can use to successfully recruit, retain, and protect diverse staff in Southern communities. The human resources has come a long way with developing policies and procedures to help hire and protect communities of color and LGBTQ. We want to take a moment and say thank you to our champions who are working to protect these communities. And I'm super excited to introduce 2 of those champions for today's webinar. We have Ms. Tatyana Moaton and Ms. Chandria Harris. They're going to introduce themselves and get right into today's discussion. Ms. Moaton, it's all yours.
Well, good morning, everyone. And as Leisha said, thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited to be facilitating this webinar this morning. My name is Tatyana Moaton, and I am a consultant and have been working in the capacity as Human Resources Manager of Diversity and Inclusion and Strategic Initiatives, currently for Howard Brown Health, which is the Midwest's largest provider of healthcare for the LGBTQ community. I'm responsible for over 500 employees at 11 clinical sites and implementing some diversity and inclusion practices and information and a lot of the initiatives that the organization has implemented through their strategic plan. So this morning I'm going to be walking you through a couple of themes and topics, and Chandria is going to come back and talk about some recruitment policies and also methods. And I always like to start off any training that I do with stating the facts. And as it says on the first slide, facts. Diversity and inclusion is a business imperative. That kind of speaks for itself. If organizations and companies intend to remain sustainable, you have to be inclusive in your practices and all of your hiring practices, your policies, particularly for the LGBTQ community. I think we do a disservice to our communities when we are thinking that we are inclusive of our patient population, but we are not as inclusive towards our employees. Fact. Diverse workforces create sustainable organizations. Like I said, in order for organizations and companies to remain sustainable, they have to be inclusive. But with that being said, I also want to point out that when you're talking about diversity and inclusion, you also must include equity as part of that conversation. If employers wish to avoid the headache of enforcing a patchwork of policies, and it makes sense for business operations, I usually suggest compliance with the state that has the most protective laws across all operations. What is not a fact is diversity automatically translates into inclusion. That kind of speaks for itself. And also another fact, sexual orientation is not a protected category under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. the primary federal workplace anti-discrimination statute. Although LGBTQ employees, however, have pursued other outlets to address discrimination in the workplace. Most commonly, they have filed lawsuits arguing that sexual orientation discrimination is actually gender or sex discrimination, which is protected under Title VII. And the last fact is there's almost uniform recognition that Title VII protects LGBTQ individuals from sex stereotyping and same-sex harassment. Some employers have elected to expressly include sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression as protected characteristics in their equal opportunity employment, anti-harassment, and other policies. Even though federal law does not cover all these bases, and while some states do cover them, others don't. Employers should note that under a 2014 executive order, federal contractors are prohibited from discriminating against workers and job applicants based on sexual orientation or gender identity. In a Human Rights Campaign 2018 survey, 46% of respondents said that they are not open at work about their LGBTQ status. This speaks to a company's climate, which can be shaped by its policies and practices. And when looking at this map of state laws that protect public and private employees against both sexual orientation and gender identity discrimination, I want you all to particularly pay attention to the areas of the South. All of those areas are gray, which means that there are no federal level or state level protections against employees, both the sexual orientation and gender identity discrimination. Currently, there are 21 states in Washington, D.C. that prohibit employment discrimination based on both sexual orientation and gender identity. A number of cities and counties have also banned employment discrimination based on LGBTQ status, even if their state has not yet. You really have to look at it by locality. Some states have created protections only for public employees. Other states and localities prohibit discrimination on sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, but not all three. It's critical for employers to understand that there are three distinct concepts with unique meanings. For instance, gender expression should not be conflated with sexual orientation. The Human Rights Campaign provides us with the following definition. Sexual orientation is an inherent or immutable, enduring emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction to other people. Gender identity is a person's innermost concept of self as male, female, a blend of both, or neither. Gender expression is a person's external appearance of gender identity, usually expressed through behavior, clothing, haircut, or voice, and which may or may not conform to socially defined behaviors typically associated with being either masculine or feminine. Now, this next slide where it's talking about equality versus equity versus reality. Remember what I said in the previous slide, that when you begin to talk about diversity and inclusion, you have to also include equity. And a lot of times, I use this slide in a lot of my diversity and inclusion and equity trainings that I do externally. Most people look at this, and I love the fact that this picture actually includes what the reality of things are. And a lot of organizations, they pride themselves on being diverse and inclusive organizations, but the reality and the fact of the matter is that oftentimes what their perception of things are is drastically different than what the reality is. And the way I'd like to illustrate this slide further is that equality is everyone getting the same thing. Equity is about everyone getting what they need for themselves to be successful in whatever area it is that they are looking for. So when you're talking about hiring and retaining LGBTQ employees, you have to take a deeper dive and not look at the fact that, hey, we're doing all of our hiring practices. We have an equal opportunity statement. We have a racial equity statement. But when you're looking at those things, you have to focus on how is this impacting across all spectrums. So when you begin to talk about so when you're looking at and you're asking the question, how does this help me? What do I do to make this change? So some workplace best practices that I kind of focus on are modernizing harassment prevention training with some realistic representative scenarios, including those employees from your organizations that are part of the LGBTQ spectrum. Also, going a step further, developing gender transition resources for employees. I can't tell you how too often I am contacted by even large pharmaceutical companies that do not have these resources for their own employees. And there are a number of ways that employers can be inclusive and compliant. Proactive steps, and that's the most important thing. Stop being so reactive and be more strategic in a lot of your policies and practices. Anti-discrimination policies should also include a very detailed but easy to follow reporting procedure. And I think that most organizations and companies oftentimes miss this, because just because you put the policy out there does not mean that everyone has access to it or know how to go about reporting them. And that's kind of making a distinction between either is this a grievance or is this a complaint. And policies are ineffective if, like I said, if employees do not know where they are or that they even exist. And most times you can accomplish this by requiring employees to acknowledge that they have received and understand the policy, and by posting information about the policy in, say, like a break room, on the internet. And most importantly, I think that organizations and companies need to be proactive. Kind of see these things before we get to that point. You may not have a trans person that is currently open or has disclosed to you, but that could be something that happens in the future. And also some other best practices is asking senior leaders to sponsor and support LGBTQ organizations. Because I would be foolish to think that every person who is on this webinar is working for or a part of the LGBTQ organization, but it's always important to kind of create those collaborative community connections, because no organization can stand on its own. And due to the long history of discrimination against LGBT people in healthcare settings, non-discrimination and employee practices policies should include the terms sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Because if you remember from the last slide, when I talked about some of those protections, although a person may not be covered expressly under gender identity or gender expression under Title VII, there are other areas that people fall into, so those intersectionalities begin to come in play. Because although I may not be protected or live in a state that is protecting me because of my gender identity, I'm a person over 40, which puts me into a protected class, and I identify as female, so that further puts me into a protected class. So getting back to what I said, you need to be proactive with a lot of those policies and procedures. And a lot of times when people, and Chandria is going to talk a little bit more about this, I hate to hear people say, I don't know, I can't find trans employees, I can't find trans candidates. And I always ask employers, where are you posting? So this is just some areas that you can post to that are LGBTQ inclusive, some job-specific sites that are specifically for the LGBTQ community. And I would be more than happy to help out in any kind of way to expand your recruitment and employee candidate pool. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my co-host, Chandria.
Hello, everyone. Hello. How are you all today? I hope you guys are doing great. As Tatyana said, I'm Chandria Harris. I am a recruiter and diversity consultant. I work in healthcare now, supporting training and development executives. And I also have my own company where I do diversity training for organizations and nonprofits. So happy you guys can be on today. It's going to be a very interactive couple minutes. So I want you to get all invited. You're all invited to participate and be very interactive in the session. So Darren, if you flip this next slide, we'll go ahead and go into it. So my goal today is to talk to you about how to elevate your representation and be more inclusive. And so when you think about recruitment and retention, oftentimes you think about just going out to get the candidates or just posting online and hoping that you'll find the right people. Today, my approach is to help you get out there, make sure that everything you have online represents who you are, what you're selling, and what you have available. Many times when I talk to employers who are trying to be more diverse, they are seeing it, but they're not showing up online like that. Their applications are not reflective, and the message is kind of mixed up. And so you want to make sure that your message is synced across the board. What you're saying, your website says, your job description says, everything match, so that when you do find that candidate, they believe and trust you, right? So we're talking about a community that really, really want trust and want to like they are protected in your environment. And so we want to make sure that you have the reputation to be trusted and that they can come in and feel welcome in that environment. So 3 points today. We're going to talk about your reputation, how to source strategically, and then your recruitment practices. So I first want to go into, I want to show you and talk about an employee value proposition. It is the meat to any recruitment task, campaign, assignment, right? And so we think about millennials and young professionals who are looking for work. They are really, really interested in a company that is culturally inclined, but are also doing community work. And so your employee value proposition, which is like an elevator pitch for professional development, is important to the candidates. They want to know what your company is saying and what you're doing in the community. Is it reflective? Can they join a company that is really, really involved in the community and care? And so I want to start with EVP because I want you to be thinking about, do I have one? Is it inclusive? Can I tell my story, our department story, our company story to candidates and help attract them to our company? So we're going to get teed up to a video. I want you to watch this 2-minute video on an amazing EVP, and it's going to talk to you about the hotel business, but I want you to see how they attract their candidates, and I will talk a little bit more about some words they use and some things they said to make their candidates feel like they're welcome. So Darian, will you please get me queued up for my little video? And I can't hear it. Okay, there it is. And so that was a really sexy EVP, but I wanted to show you how the hotel industry attracts employers and candidates to come work for them, right? They said, we're not just in the hotel business, we're in the people business. We're in the business to invite people to the show. So if you're into like creating a show, great customer service, having a great time, this is where you need to be. And so when you look at that video, and it's played at every recruitment event that MGM Grand has, they are telling people, if you want to have a good time, come join us. If you want to be a part of a great show, come join us. We have 77,000 employees. So we're not just a small hotel chain. Yeah, and that is important because, right, as I mentioned to you before, young professionals are interested in companies that are making a huge impact, who's doing some big things. And like MGM Grand was really big on showing, this is what we're doing. Come be a part of us and welcome to the show. And so what I want to do now is just look at a couple more EVPs. They're not as cool as MGM Grand, but I want to give you an idea of what you should be considering, because this EVP is your message, is your elevator pitch when you're talking to candidates, is your pitch when you're talking to organizations that you want to join and be a part of. So you want to make sure this is clear and is reflective of what your company and your department is trying to achieve. So if you can get your chat box on, I would love for you to tell me, when you look at the Nike EVP, what is it saying? What are some words that you see that is reflective that will make a candidate want to join their team, right? It says, when you join Nike, you're part of the family. And so when you think of family, it's a sense of belonging. It lets me know that I'm a part of a team that is large. Anything else that you guys see a part of the Nike EVP that will make you feel like, as a candidate, I want to be a part of this company? And use your chat feature to chat me and tell me anything, tell me what you see in the EVP that is reflective of how a candidate will feel attracted to work for Nike. So Darian, if you could chat me or let me connect me to what they're saying, I can't really see it, it would be great. Or if you could just kind of have, Alicia, if you could say, possibly chat me. But what is it saying? It's like, not only that you're part of a family, but invest in your culture, thank you, right? Inspiring greatness, that's amazing, that's true. It's appealing, it's investing. And so another thing Nike is saying is, you're part of the family, we're gonna treat you well. We're gonna give you competitive healthcare, you're gonna have work-life balance, you're gonna have a sense of security. They're promising that if you are part of my team, if you're part of us, this is what you'll receive. Now, Stripe is a little different, and I love theirs because they come from a different perspective, right? What do you guys see that Stripe is saying to their potential candidates? What is Stripe saying to them? I can see the chat now, yay. So at Stripe, it says you're encouraged to apply, even if you don't have experience. The biggest stigma is, I can't apply to a job if I don't have all of the qualifications. Stripe says that's not true. Apply to us. We'll look at your passion. We'll look at your skills. Let us decide, right?
Yes.
That willing to invest in people. That is so true, Tatyana. Like, Stripe is like, come with what you already have. I believe in you. I want your diverse perspective. We want you to challenge what we're already saying. And so that is appealing to candidates when they want to make a difference, because that's one of their ultimate goals right now in this world, is to really make a difference. And if your EVP pretty much tells them that you can make a difference here, it's going to be attractive, right? It's not going to be hard to sell why you should join this company. And you want to make it as easy as possible to get candidates the buy-in to be a part and want to be a part of your company. Your EVP is one of the best ways to really elevate your brand and attract others. So 2 to 3 sentences. You want to get with your marketing team to create a collateral video. You want to definitely have that. You want to be able to be articulate with your speech and go over it a couple of times so that when you're out and about, you're able to share it and it matches what your company is trying to achieve. And so after you've had a really, really great EVP, you've worked through the kinks of that, you're not really ready to go recruit yet. You want to then go onto your online website and make sure that is reflective. As I mentioned earlier, your reputation is what others believe, right? Their opinions of you. And you want to make sure everything that you have online is represents what you're saying, your job description, and exactly what you're going to offer the candidate. So I want you guys, if you can, go to uber.com. And I love Uber because as I was looking for resources on companies that are doing it right, Uber is one of them. So if you go to their career website, look at their diversity inclusion statement. Not only is there a statement there, but their EVP is front and center. So as soon as you decide that you want to even check out Uber, they have already given you some keys to success to make you feel like they're doing it right. And most professionals who are experienced, who are trans or LGBT, they are going to go and find counsel on how to approach this. They're going to want to know how I should go out. Before I go out and start looking for opportunities, how should I show up? And so Equal and Out is a nonprofit that supports the community, and they tell them, I want you to go on the website and see what resources they have available for you. See if they're telling you about the company culture. What are their policies? And so the community is being trained on what to look for, and your company needs to make sure that you have that available. Your website should be reflective of what you want that community, the diverse community, to see. So if you look on Uber website, you'll see, if you go down to the career section, the diversity inclusion, the learn more section, you'll see not only their EVP, their video, but if you click learn more, what I love the most, guys, is like they have a statement for every traditional disadvantaged group you can consider. Like they have I promise you, if you join our team, this is what you'll receive. It is so remarkable to see that online, and so that if you're a part of this community, you'll go there, you'll see their statement, and you'll instantly begin to trust them, right? It's their promise. So if you're able to look at that website, I would love for you to chat and just tell me, do you like how they have it set up? Like how Uber has talked to every different class, every different organization, or I would say it's a part of that protective class. It's brilliant how they're talking to the Asians, how they're talking to LGBT, how they're talking to African Americans. They have a statement for everyone. And that is a very inclusive way to show up and say, this is what we believe in, this is what we want to do. So make sure your online presence match your EVP and is reflective of what you want them to see when they go and apply for your jobs. The next thing we're going to go through is sourcing. So now it's time. You have your EVP, your website is up to date and ready to roll, and now you're ready to go out in the community and find talent. Now, I know Tatyana mentioned, hey, post on these sites. That's correct. You want to post on those sites, but you first want to get out in the community. You have to do some grunt work. You're going to have to get out there and show these communities that you believe in them. And so I know you want to be strategic and send someone, a part of that community, to go out to the community, but it doesn't really show transparency. So before you decide to go recruit and just send the person on your team that is diverse, everyone should go. Everyone should show, you should show them a representation of your entire company. And so I know it may be shameful. You may think, oh my gosh, I don't have any diverse people on my team. That's fine. Transparency is so important. And if you can show up and say, hey, look guys, we're recruiting. We are looking for diverse talent. We don't have it. It's better than trying to send someone that looks like them, right? And it doesn't show transparency or authenticity. And like I mentioned, those two things are so important in the community. So some places that I think you should start is going to the Chamber of Commerce. So you want to look at all the diverse chambers. They're going to be professionals who sign up, who pay to get resources and be a part of those communities, that a part of that network. And if you want to find professionals who are already trained, already ready to go, your best bet is to connect with those Chamber of Commerces first. They have business after hours, they have meetings during the day. I mean, you're going to truly connect with the cream of the crop in your area if you decide to take a niche approach and talk to these diverse chambers. Another cool way is to look for, like, say for instance, you're recruiting for a specific role, like you're looking for someone who has a master's degree, someone who has a lot of marketing experience. Those associations you can lean on for support. They're going to be able to tell you who's a part of their network they can connect you to. That's easy for you to go and have a conversation with the chamber members and talk about your company. Sponsor something, sponsor an event, sponsor lunch, sponsor breakfast, and share your EVP share your open job opportunities, talk to them. Then you go post online. Because they already see your face, they know who you are, they know what you believe in, then you go post. So for instance, National Black Organization for Masters, the National Black Masters Association is another great resource for you. And so that organization is I would say is nationally known, and they only work with African Americans who have master's degrees. If that's important for them to have a master's degree, you know where to go find them. And so I highly recommend you to be aggressive, go out to those organizations' events and be a part of what they're doing, and share your message, and then share your job description, and then share where to go find the job online to apply. And another cool thing is, like, recently, Nashville, we had Pride Month, and I noticed that Assyrians showed up in a very big way. They not only participated in the parade, they sponsored the parade, they all had on Pride shirts, and I can only imagine how many recruits they received just from that event alone. So you can't be nervous. You gotta get out there and connect with that community and show them that you're involved and that you care, right? Trust and care are two major ways to really connect. Now, I want to go to the job description a little bit, and I want to talk about posting and ghosting, right? So I call it hashtag anti-post and fly. And what that means is you don't want to just post a job online. Go back, Darren. You don't want to just post a job online and assume that they're going to know that what you stand for, know that you care about them, and know that you're really invested in the community. You can't just post and fly. You can't just post and say, well, I'll see what opportunities come. I'll see what candidates pop up. It's not a real great way to connect with the community if you've never connected with the community. You want to make sure your name's out there, right? You want to make sure that people know who you are and what you stand for. So be sure when you post a job online on any source or site, connect with those people first. Connect with the people who started that, who's a part of that association or is overseeing that website, and see if there's any way if you can even write an article, right? And so if you're posting on Indeed, or if you're posting on one of the sources that Tatyana provided to you, go and write an article on that site as well, and provide feedback or information to those candidates about your company in a very strategic way. And so you can write an article on, like, how to write a great resume, how to appeal to this company, and they'll notice what company wrote that article, and it'll connect them to, like, I should check them out. They give it away free information on how to get involved with their community. I should go apply to them. So those are some really strategic ways I think you can begin sourcing talent and meeting them where they are and going where they are. So I want to pause for a minute and give you a couple moments to ask questions. Any questions on sourcing, any unique questions on how to appeal to them when you get there. I'm happy to take any questions before I move forward. So Tatyana and I will chime back and forth on any sourcing questions that you guys have. Don't be shy. We're really here to help you.
Okay.
So I'm waiting to see. Tatyana, you want to chime in any on, like, the sourcing side, or like recruiting, anything you wanted to add to what I thought would be some great ways to get out in the community?
Yeah, and kind of touching on also what Chandria said, when it comes to, like, sourcing, most importantly, it's important that you are posting in the areas for candidates that you're looking for. If you know historically marginalized populations have unequal access to a lot of the services and technologies that most other populations have or utilize, then if you're looking to hire and recruit health educators and you're posting these positions on places like LinkedIn, you know that most people are not accessing sites like that. So kind of diversifying your posting, like you can even utilize social media, word of mouth work. But then also in that, kind of thinking back and thinking about changing some of your required on your job description to prefer, and even allowing candidates to utilize some of their life experiences to be to satisfy some of those prefers and requirements as well.
That's so true. I was going to add that on my next slide, is that if you're going to use social media, use hashtags. And so you're going to have to go and do research on what hashtags appeal to what community, but be consistent. So if you're going to start a page online and you want to be able to have a source readily, easily available to them, use the hashtags, post resources, and be willing to answer questions. And Darren, if you'll skip and go to my recruitment best practices page, I'm going to talk to you also about the job description. One more. And so, as Tatyana already mentioned, when you're creating a job description, make sure what you're telling the talent that you need is actually what you really need. Although we recruit, we tell them all the time, you don't have to have all the experience to apply to a role. They don't believe it. Like, the applications usually hardly ever get to the top. A lot of these people are part of this community, feels like they're not going to get picked anyway. And so your goal is to help make them feel better about about the job that you have available, and that you're willing to allow the job that they have available, and that you're willing to talk to them about the opportunity. And so here, I went on GLAD website, and I noticed that they had a real short, sweet, and simple application available to apply for a role. And one big thing that all companies grew up with is like their applications are too long. I mean, if you have a 10-minute long application, you're going to lose candidates anyway. So you want to make sure it's short, sweet, and to the point. And one thing that I saw that was really cool is the pronouns. So instead of asking about gender, you said, what are your pronouns, right? So you're being inclusive and showing them that we are really interested in meeting you where you are. Another thing is the lexicon. So the words that you use, the way you talk when you're writing your post is so important. Like, as I mentioned, I work at HC Healthcare, and they changed their entire lexicon, and now they're calling their employees. We're all colleagues. And so you want to make sure your lexicon is reflective and inclusive, that you're incorporating all diversity, like all people in your practices and your message. It's going to truly attract them. Tatyana, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and like Chandria said, even including, because most of the information that you're going to be gathering is voluntary anyway. You're not allowed to ask the person's sex or gender. So when you're starting off and you're right away, you're asking a person, what are your pronouns? That it's something as small as that in and of itself shows how inclusive your organization or your company is. And that's a very, very important thing, because you have to, like Chandria said, even when making your job descriptions and your job postings, you have to be aware of a lot of the language that you're using. If you're utilizing a lot of gendered language in those postings, then you're going to wipe out an entire segment of the population that you are attempting to recruit for.
Yeah, any questions that you have for us on recruitment? And if I'm going to go back to, Dan, if you switch to my last page, I would say my parting words to you is, your reputation sums up who you are. You can rebuild your reputation. You can enhance your reputation. You can elevate it. You want to make sure your EVP is strong. Find the sweet spot between the candidate values, and what you're trying to achieve. And it's going to truly help attract those candidates to your company. Don't just get into the practice of posting and flying away and trying to see if you'll attract anyone. Get active, get in the community, be a part of those associations. Have an online presence. Make sure it matches your diversity statement. Make sure everything is cohesive. You want it all to match. What you say to your candidates, what your website says to your candidate, what your job description says. All of it needs to match. Keep your application short and sweet, but inclusive. And last but not least, but be human. Like, it comes with transparency. Recently, I had a client that reached out and said, Chandria, I need your help. My company looked like mashed potatoes. I need gravy. And it was the cutest statement, because I'm like, I'm happy to help you. Like, he was so transparent that all we have mashed potatoes here. I need gravy. And so I think the best way to start is just to get out there and tell them, this is what we have. We're aggressively looking for diverse talent. Whatever it takes, we want you to be a part of our team, and we'll meet you where you are, just like Nike, just like Stripe. just like MGM Grand. They're changing the narrative of what companies are looking for and how they are attracting their talent. So thank you so much for listening to my segment today. And I'm happy, Tatyana, we can talk to you. We have definitely time for question and answer. We're happy to answer any questions you have, and any unique questions we'll take. We're happy. So any questions? Tatyana, anything you want to discuss about recruitment that we should bring up?
Yeah, I think and kind of just bringing it all home, remembering, going back to the part that I said about diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I distinguish the three things. Diversity is about numbers. You have the people, you have your diversity numbers. Inclusion is about impact. When you're truly wanting to make an impact to the community, focus on the inclusion part. But the last piece, and the most important piece to me, is equity. Bringing candidates in and paying them what they are worth. I think we do a disservice to our communities when we fail to pay candidates what they are truly worth. And if you're attempting to keep the people that you want, you have to pay them. And most important, and out of all of that, allowing people to be the experts of their own experiences.
I agree. Recently, I was at a diversity conference and I heard another consultant say, diversity has been invited to the party, inclusion has been accident, belonging has been able to bring your own music. And so that's why I keep hitting on the EVP, because that's the belonging piece that Maslow talks about, that people want to feel when they're part of a community, when they're part of a company, when they invest so many hours working with a company, they want to feel like they belong there. And so it's important to make sure that everything is reflective as you go recruit, because they're going to talk to people and see it. They're going to go and figure out, are you really what you're talking about? Are you really displaying what you're saying is what you're really backing up? Is your reputation reflective of what everything is online and what you're doing in the community?
Yeah, and I was at the National Health Prevention Conference, and we were doing a panel on leadership, trans leadership. And I had a person who came up during the question session, and they were part of a major health department. And they said, I am really having a hard time finding trans candidates. And for me, I was like, wait a minute, sitting on the panel to be asked that question. And I'm like, you give me 10 minutes and I can get you 10 qualified candidates. So it kind of goes back to what Chandria said. Knowing where you're posting, looking at where you're posting, and focusing on a lot of those LGBTQ inclusion sites and services that you want to kind of put out there to bring in the candidates, to expand your candidate pool.
So we have a couple questions on Tatyana. I'm very happy. So one of them says, are online job search engines a good option, such as Indeed or Monster? We recruit in a way that is inclusive, but our staff, policies, environment is still a work in progress. How can we reconcile that? That's a great question. So honestly, I think Indeed and Monster would be viable options if your job description shows inclusivity already. I know that it's a work in progress for everyone, but you have to start somewhere. So if you're gonna post on a site such as Indeed and Monster, be sure your job description is very inclusive. It welcomes diversity. Your website is actually welcoming diversity as well. So that way you're at least able to show that you're starting and you're trying somewhere.
Yeah, and one of the questions that I have are, what are some first steps for our traditional white organizations to become truly inclusive and diverse? I think one of the first steps that even when doing assessments with organizations that I'm going to start consulting work, is focusing on your racial equity statement. And when I talk about your racial equity statement, acknowledging the fact, I think most diversity and inclusion trainings of the old used to be blaming and shaming. And the new methodology is kind of shying away from that, acknowledging the fact that in a lot of us, we have certain privileges, and acknowledging those, but also moving past those things. I don't like to, we know the problems exist. I don't like to deal in problems. I like to deal in solutions. Let's focus on how do we move forward? How do we get to where it is that we want to go? So like I said, one of the first steps that an organization can do is developing a racial equity statement. And in that racial equity statement, also taking it a step further, going to a gender and gender expression equity statement and a lot of those things.
I agree. As I mentioned prior, like Uber had not only a diversity statement, but a video that was reflective of that. And so you're gonna have to get a couple people on board in your company to begin to create the narrative and recreate the narrative. And you can start with your job descriptions, you can start with your diversity statement, you can start with creating a video and using what you have to attract the talent, but you're gonna have to make a stance. You're gonna have to make a stance online. You're gonna have to make a stance in your words and what you say. That's the first way you can really get started sharing the new message or what you're trying to achieve. I had another question, Tatyana, said, if I'm not in a position of power or decision making, what suggestions do you have for bringing today's topic forward with leadership so we can shift our hiring practice and become more diverse and inclusive? That's a great question. So I think overall, diversity inclusion definitely affects business and productivity. And if they can't understand any else, they understand business and productivity. And so you can lean on reports that show how, if you're not diverse, how it's affecting your bottom line. And that is the first, I think, pitch you should tell your company, like how this is affecting the bottom line of your business and your decision making and how it's affecting your company. So take them business all day, and then they'll understand why they need to be a part of the diversity conversation and make a stance on that. That's a great question.
Yeah, and just taking it a step further, most people, like kind of Chandria said, most people, they don't understand in business. Feelings don't exist in business. That's just the simple fact of the matter. But equipping yourself with data, going in and looking at some of the annual reports, looking at your patient numbers if you're working in a healthcare setting, looking at the people that you're servicing. If your employee population is not matching that of your patient population, then you're doing a disservice to the community that you are trying to target. And I tell people all the time, I don't care if you have an organization or a company that has all of the lovely bells and whistles and televisions and droids and robots that will speak to you when you walk into the clinic. If you live your life by the adage or are practicing in business but thinking that if you build it, they will come, I will tell you, you are going to fail. People want to be affirmed in who they are and met where they are. So if you are not putting people in front of the people who they can wholeheartedly identify with, then those people will stop coming to your organization. A major part of the HIV continuum is retaining people into care. If you have an organization that has, and you're servicing a high population of trans individuals or gender non-conforming individuals, and there's no one there that looks like them or that they can identify with, they will not come back to your clinics or your organizations. I can promise you that.
That's true.
But it is imperative that you be inclusive in your work practices, and not just that, like I said, focusing on the policies and procedures that are affecting of those populations. Be proactive. See those things before they happen. And just from a risk and analysis perspective, organizations fall into that perspective where now I have to do something because now it's here. Kind of look at those things and see where they're going to get before they actually get there.
I agree. So I had another question, Tatyana. It says, we want diversity, but our salary, they're coming in. I'm happy about it. Okay, let me see. I just missed it. Okay. We want diversity, but our salary is not competitive to attract the talent we need. We do not want the message to be people of color are not paid fairly. How do we recruit diversity when the salary is not that appealing? That's the issue for many nonprofits. And so I think first and foremost, you want to talk about the quality of life and any other benefits that's enticing. And you want to make sure that what you are offering them and what you want them to do match. And so you can give, I would say, quality of life that is just as compelling as a large salary. And most professionals realize that nonprofits are going to pay a little less than the business, like a private business. So you can be more compelling with what you want them to do. You can be more flexible with your benefits and your vacations, other things that matter to them. Tatyana, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. Wait, I kind of missed the question because I was looking at the other questions. What was the question again? I'm sorry, Chandria.
Okay, it says we want diversity, but our salary is not.
It.
Okay, I'm sorry. It says we want diversity, but our salary is not competitive to attract the talent we need. We do not want the message to be people of color are not paid fairly. How do we recruit diversity when the salary is not that appealing? And so I mentioned, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and that is kind of like what Chandria said. That's problematic across all nonprofits, particularly nonprofit sector. And when you do, like I've done and conducted a lot of employee engagement surveys across a lot of organizations, and you will discover that a lot of the employees that come to your organization are mission driven. So they're not really there for the pay, but they want in that piece, a lot of people also kind of fall into or lull into that sense of, oh, well, they're here for the mission, so I can kind of underpay them. People want to be paid what they are worth. And that's like that when focusing on diversity and inclusion, you also have to include the equity portion, because it becomes, you kind of get into those areas where you're becoming it's liability issues because of the fact of pay parity issues and a lot of those things that exist. So kind of looking at the positions that you have across the organization and kind of doing your comp analysis and benchmarking some of those in comparison to some of the other nonprofits within your area, or looking at some of the other ones that they have, like NAC, which is the National Association of Healthcare Centers, and looking at some of those and looking at, accessing a lot of those comp analysis to be able to benchmark a lot of those pay perspectives. But once you start to benchmark those positions, you have a basis of where to go from. But then you can take into account education and experience and a lot of those things. But you have to pay people what they're worth. That's just the simple fact of the matter.
Ms. Moaton and Ms. Harris, we have about 9 minutes left, and you still have a couple of questions. So I just wanted to remind you about the time. We might have to shorten the responses just a little to get to some of these rich questions that people want to ask you. So Ms. Harris, you can continue.
Yes, ma'am. Tatyana, do you see questions as well, or do I just see them?
Yes, I see one here from Nico, and it says, oftentimes there's a time crunch related to hires and searches, and our argument is used, we don't have time to do a wide search, we need someone now. How do we advocate for inclusive hiring under that kind of pressure? That's kind of it's kind of tricky. It's kind of tricky because there's a fine line in that, and a lot of times when executives, they kind of know who they want, particularly for those kind of positions. But then I come back to them and say, well, although we don't have time to do a wide search, how about we do a targeted specific search? So in that, there's ways to do inclusive hiring practices in that same thing. Chandria, did you want to chime in on that as well?
I agree, and so I think that whole "we need to hire now" is definitely a tactic and a ploy to go ahead and get who they want in. But if you build those relationships, if you just start with one association and start there by asking for referrals, at least you have some resumes to start with. And so the sooner you begin to connect with organizations and associations in your area, the sooner you're able to truly interject and give resumes, receive resumes from candidates who's looking, and you can easily begin that process of, I can help with the hiring. I can help with that now. And so I had another question that says, do you all have any good reference documents or articles that you can share that speaks to how diversity impacts businesses, bottom line, and productivity? SHRM is your best friend. So SHRM is the Society for Human Resource Management. Johnny Taylor is now the CEO, and he has he is really targeting this now. And so if you're part of SHRM, if you can join, amazing. They'll have every document, every report you need to help your decision makers make decisions. If not, I can get you some things and pull out. I can send you some things that you can look at for review. But go on SHRM's website, and they have some free resources there as well. That's going to be your biggest association that you can lean on for facts about hiring practices.
Yeah, and like I had shared in the chat as well to Candace, the Moaton Group, which is out of here in Chicago, they have some white papers that they have making the business case for diversity and inclusion in business as well.
Are there any other questions for Tatyana or Chandria? If so, please use your chat feature. I'm also going to ask you if you felt the information you received today was informative and assist your organization, we'd like for you to type yes into the chat feature as well. This is an immediate evaluation of the content provided to us by two amazing presenters. Okay. Okay, so since I don't see any additional questions coming in, I'd like to thank you for listening to this presentation on today. This webinar will be available on the website for reference. And I know many of us, including myself, are looking forward to revisiting the rich information that was provided today. If you want to learn more about this topic or requesting a training, please apply on our website at www.gileadcompass.com. Again, that's gileadcompass, one word, .com. Tune in next month on Thursday, August 15th for our next webinar topic, which is how to support and address the needs and challenges of the rural South. Until next time, have a great day, and thank you for joining us.